Hi there, I'm Vincent Boss and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing scientific reason your ex will miss you. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.dateme.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. Check out my socials for extra content. The links are in the description. So now let's get back into today's podcast. And today we are discussing scientific reason your ex will miss you. So if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, you will want your ex to miss you. But is it scientifically likely? In today's podcast, I'll be discussing 3 scientific reasons your ex will miss you. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is oxytocin and bonding. So oxytocin is a hormone that facilitates bonding and emotional closeness. It's released during moments of intimacy and affection, contributing to the sense of connection between partners. Oxytocin released during a relationship doesn't immediately dissipate after a breakup, and therefore the dumper might still feel the effects of this hormone, leading to a sense of missing the intimacy and connection. And this is something really important to discuss, because when a relationship ends, we're obviously experiencing things in the moment. We're experiencing that very moment where the breakup's taken place. There is a lot of negativity on show. You as a dumpee are likely shocked, you're likely blindsided. Even if you somewhat saw it coming, you probably never really thought that your ex-dumper would take the action. Maybe you felt things weren't perfect, but you just didn't think they would actually end it. I mean, why are they throwing this all away? You know, that is something I often hear dumpees asking. And when we consider the negativity of a breakup, the feelings you have as a dumpee, the feelings the dumper has as well, it's very understandably easy to forget that there has been a lot of emotional closeness and bonding between you up until this point. And that's why when we look at the scientific reasons for why your ex-dumper can miss you, oxytocin is so important. Oxytocin is a hormone that facilitates bonding and emotional closeness. This is something that you can't put your finger on, you can't really describe, it's just something that you feel, and that's exactly the point. It's a hormone. It's released when 2 people are feeling that level of closeness, but you only can in a romantic relationship, certainly within this regard. We're talking about how 2 people together can build something with their special intimacy and feel something which is magical. They feel something that you can't put your finger on, you can't explain. That is love. That, in part, is built upon via oxytocin and the bonding effect that it can have between partners. And therefore, it's important to remember that this doesn't just vanish completely at the time of a breakup. There's going to be those lingering moments, those lingering feelings, that lingering emotion and hormone still running through the veins of both of you, especially of you as a dumpee right now, but also your ex-dumper is going to be feeling that as well. Now, oxytocin also helps solidify positive memories, which can lead and create a sense of nostalgia connected to the fading effect bias. Now, the fading effect bias, for those of you who are not aware, is the concept that negative memories fade sooner over time in comparison to positive memories. You might say it's when somebody's wearing rose-tinted glasses. They are viewing the past in a more rosy, brilliant way, you could say, than perhaps it actually was. And this, again, is somewhat in part due to oxytocin. And the fading effect bias really works into the favour of dumpees, because your ex-dumper, as time moves on, is going to be thinking, feeling, and imagining the past to be probably a little bit more glowing than it really was. Now, this doesn't mean we're going to forget about the bad times. It doesn't mean we're going to forget about something really bad or terrible you may have done. No, it's not a way of just magically evaporating everything which was negative about your connection. That's not going to happen, but bad things don't just disappear. But, importantly, they start to hold less weight. They start to hold less value within the connection. So although the bad things won't be forgotten, they mean just a little bit less than the positive memories. And that's the beauty of this. Positive memories will hold their value much longer than negative memories. Negative memories will fade sooner over time in comparison to the positive. That's the fading effect bias. That is connected to oxytocin. And that is why you as a dumpee can feel the scientific benefit of what's going on, not just in your mindset and your body, but importantly in this regard, your ex-dumpers. Because this is what matters in this concept. Of course, it matters about what happens with you and your decisions and your choices. But if you want to get your ex back, your ex-dumper needs to have a mindset shift. They need to change their concept and their theories. They need to miss you. And this is why it's important to recognize that even though they've made a decision, they've actioned a breakup, they've decided your relationship wasn't working for them, and unfortunately took that step to end things, it's important to remember that oxytocin, the fading effect bias, all of these things are working in your favor post-breakup. Even though they feel they're making the right decision, science is actually working against them in this regard. And actually, science is working for you. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast. Please like this video if you're watching on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. And point number 2 is emotional dependence. Now the dumper may miss the emotional support and understanding that the dumpee likely gave them. Now you as a dumpee might think, well, why are they going to miss things about something that they've decided they no longer want to continue with? But please listen on and see once again how science can really help you as a dumpee. Now, the reliance on a dumper's thoughts and feelings about the support, the reliance on the dumpee providing that support is not necessarily something your ex-dumper is going to consciously realize or acknowledge. This isn't something which they consciously realize and recognize, because if they did, they probably wouldn't end the relationship. If they was consciously recognizing that the support, the love, the emotional connection that you two had together, if they were really thinking about that in a logical sense, they're not going to have ended the relationship. The fact that they did just shows that sadly this is in the background. But it is in the background and it hasn't gone. And therefore, the emotional dependence which is built up over time during a relationship is something which can be missed. And even though that reliance, even if it's not consciously acknowledged, it can lead to feelings of your ex-dumper missing you, the dumpee. And this is also once more connected to the routines and the patterns of life that you two would have shared within your relationship. Now, everybody would have had some type of routine. Maybe it's quite rigid and obvious between you and your former partner, or perhaps you felt that you were very spontaneous together, which I'm pretty sure there would have been a routine, if not a pattern of some sort, about the life you lived together. Maybe you were married and you lived together in a physical sense, and you had very much got routines and patterns in your life. Perhaps you didn't live together. You felt you're quite spontaneous, but then if you actually think back, no, there were some patterns. You always went out on a Friday night, for instance. You always went to a restaurant once a month on a Saturday. Whatever it may be, you would have had patterns, you would have had routines. And when we see disruptions to routines and patterns, this can cause the dumper's brain to miss the familiarity of what's going on. And what's going on is you, the dumpee. They are missing the familiarity of you, the ex. Now you might think, well, I don't want them to miss a pattern. I don't want them to miss a routine. I want them to actually miss me. And although that is a very good point, you don't really want your ex-dumper to miss the relationship. You want them to miss you. Although that is a valid point, a valid concern, this needs to be that first step towards you two hopefully one day getting back together. You can't go from 0 to 60. You can't go from your ex-dumper thinking your relationship isn't working to then the following day thinking, yes, let's get back together. Sadly, it's not as easy as that. So anything which can get your ex-dumper moving in the right direction to start reconsidering things is very helpful indeed. And therefore, even if they're initially pulled towards you because they're missing the familiarity of you, the patterns, the routines that you brought to them, they're missing that feeling of what you kind of gave them, the emotional support, even though it might be a conceptual kind of feeling, not necessarily you as a person at first. What we can say is that it can bring them closer towards you by actually putting a magnifying glass on you and the relationship. So although it might be them missing the routine of not going out to dinner once a month anymore, that actually gets them to start thinking about you again, the fact that they get to that point of thinking about you again can be the door opening to hopefully you two one day getting back together. Because if they're not thinking about you, they can't miss you. So that is why it's really important in this scientific sense to think, okay, the brain might be missing the routine, but if the routine is connected to you, it will highlight you, the dumpee, and provide a greater opportunity for your ex-dumper to focus on the relationship and think, actually, you know what? They are a great person. I do miss them as a person, and I would like to potentially reach out to them and see how things go. This is how things can develop. This is how romantic emotional attraction can start to regrow. And if you're a dumpee and you want your ex back, you need everything to go in your favour. And therefore, whatever it may be, whether it's routines, patterns, whether it is the feeling of emotional support, not being there anymore. If your ex-dumper is feeling an emotional dependence on you, then this can be that first step towards them one day wanting to reconnect. Now, if you would like advice and support about how to try and increase the chance of one day getting your ex back, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service, where me and you can speak one-on-one about your unique specific situation. Go to my website www.dateme.tips for more information about how I can become your coach and your teammate via my audio coaching service. Talking about your feelings can also improve your mental health. It helps prevent the buildup of negative emotions, which can lead to stress, anxiety, depression, and even physical health issues. Speak your heart to free your mind. So now let's get back to point number 3 and the final point of today's podcast. If you feel that this podcast has helped you, please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description. And point number 3 is attachment theory. Now, throughout the relationship, your ex-dumper would have formed an attachment with you, providing a sense of security and comfort. And after the breakup, they are likely to feel an emptiness, even though they action the breakup. Now, we've mentioned this earlier, the fact that your ex-dumper decided to end the relationship. Why might they miss you in that regard? But it doesn't matter that they took the action. The fact is, they can still feel that emptiness. They probably didn't see it coming. They probably didn't expect it, but they still can. And this is because an attachment would have been created between you and your ex-dumper. And that level of security and comfort which is felt is very, very powerful. And once it's gone, irrespective of who decided to sever the relationship, well, you, whoever is involved, is going to start missing one another. Now, our brains are wired to seek connection, and breaking an attachment can trigger feelings of loss and longing. Now, it's my belief that as human beings, we are not meant to be alone. Now, some of you might disagree with this, and that's absolutely fine. That's your opinion. But in my opinion, us as human beings are not meant to be alone. Of course, we need alone time. Of course, we can have moments of doing our own thing. That goes without saying. But I'm suggesting that as human beings, our best moments are with and within connections. Often people will say it's not possessions which bring them happiness. It's actually connections, family, okay? So if we consider that, we can see that our brains are wired to seek connection. And then if we consider the breaking of an attachment, what that can actually do for triggering of the feelings of loss and longing. Now, depending on the unique attachment style of your ex-dumper, will dictate exactly how they are feeling. And we can separate the attachment styles into 3 main sections: secure, avoidant, and anxious. Now, there are some subcategories, you could say, but they are the main ones. If you have a secure attachment style, that is the healthiest style to be having. And if you are not secure, this is something you want to try to get towards through support, through therapy. You can move and improve and grow and alter your attachment style, but it's very difficult to do so because attachment styles are developed during our very early formative years via our caregivers, i.e. in most instances, our parents. And if and how your parents would have treated you and the behaviours that they showcase towards you, this would have developed the attachment style that you would have in adult life. Again, secure is the best, secure is the one which is the healthiest, but not everybody is lucky enough to have secure attachment. Some have an anxious attachment style, some have an avoidance attachment style, and again, like I said, there are subcategories and whatnot as well, but they are the main 3. And depending on what attachment style your ex-dumper has, will dictate exactly how they feel and behave if and when a connection is severed. So when we break that attachment, this is where the feelings will come into play, irrespective of who caused it. Whether it's you as a dumpee on the receiving end, whether it's them as the dumper causing the break of a relationship, they're still going to see that relationship, unfortunately, end, the breaking of the attachment, and the triggering is going to be felt. Now, the dumper will likely, if unexpectedly, miss your connection due to this. Once again, a running theme through today's podcast, they probably don't expect it, because if they expected it, they wouldn't have done it. But the truth is, they will likely feel it. It's not something they have a choice over, it's biology, it's science. This is what's going to happen, and dependent on if they are secure, avoidant, or anxious, will dictate exactly how they do feel during this time and how they may react beyond it. Now, the good thing for you as a dumpee who wants to try to get your ex back, from my experience and research and doing this job now for many years, I have seen dumpees get their ex back, whether they are a secure attachment, whether they are an avoidant attachment, or whether they are an anxious attachment. I don't see any attachment style which has quote-unquote never come back. So when people say to me, well, my ex-dumper was an avoidant and they are really, really stubborn and they would never, ever, ever come back. Well, listen, in my opinion, the heart will always win through eventually. I've seen many, many dumpees get their ex-dumper back, even if they were an avoidant. Does it mean you will get your avoidant back? I can't guarantee that. I can't guarantee any of you will get your ex back. But what I can say, it's certainly possible, and we have science to thank for it.